Ask Mapped episode 120. Hello, my friends. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, one of your fabulous co-hosts here on Ask Mapped. I'm with the OG crew today, Dr. Scott Wright, former director of admissions at UT Southwestern, retired executive director at TMDSAS. Don't call it Tim Doss. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Enjoying some cooler weather here in Texas, so everything's
cool.
good.
Yep. Staying cool.
Of course,
That's
cool
good.
is a relative term, but you know.
Yes. When it's 80 versus 100, that's cool.
Yes.
There you go. That works. And co-founder of Mapped, Premed Mcat expert, Rachel Grubbs. How are you doing?
Hello. I am very well. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
It's always a fun part of the week.
I'm excited to announce, finally, Application Academy for 2023 is up and running in terms of signing up. You can go sign up, applicationacademy.com. I just threw that one at the team, so they don't have a banner ready for that. But hey, look at that, applicationacademy.com. Go check it out. It is an amazing group coaching experience that has helped lots of people get into medical school, and definitely affordable and amazing. You get to hang out with all of the amazing now Medical School HQ advisors as we rebrand our advising from Mapped to Medical School HQ for our pre-med advising. So Application Academy, if you are applying in 2023 to start medical school in 2024, go check it out. There's an early bird, save $100 going on right now. And with that, let's rock and roll. We have any questions coming up? So just a reminder for all of you tuning in both on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you are watching. We're here for the hour to answer your questions. You have a combined 1,000 years of pre-med experience. Yes, that is how old Dr. Scott Wright is. We have amazing experience here for you today.
I'm not even going to comment. I'm not even going to comment.
I love you.
I'm not even going to comment.
Hello, this is Jan from last week asking about when to worry about interviews. I got my first one. Then what are you worried about? What are 2 pieces of advice you have? I already purchased your book. All right, that's number 1. Dr. Scott Wright, interview prep for Jan here. Her first interview invite. What is the one uno piece of advice that you would have to give everyone?
Practice. Yeah. Practice with friends, practice with mentors, practice in front of the mirror.
Practice with a fox, practice in a box, practice with a mouse, and practice in a house. Yeah. But that's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because we often give feedback to students like, you sound super rehearsed, you've practiced too much. How do you balance that?
Well, I think that the rehearsed part of it mostly comes from when you're rehearsing content to specific questions. And I'm not suggesting necessarily that a student would want to rehearse a lot of content. That's important, but I think rehearsing, practicing with questions that you don't know what's coming at you, practicing the pace of your language, for example, practicing how you're sitting and, things like that. But you do practice the content also. But I think it's a bit of a fine line. But I think that if you practice, some in terms of what you're going to say and how you're going to say it on particular questions that are pretty common, such as, tell me about yourself, or what are your strengths and weaknesses, those sorts of questions. But yeah, you don't want to write it out and then try to reiterate it or whatever. So
yeah. But Rachel, your one piece of advice.
My one piece of advice is do your research. And And, I've been doing a lot of practice questions with people. And what I find particularly is when I say why this school, and granted, you're doing practice interviews, so like they may or may not have a school in mind yet. But they often answer why medicine, or if it's a DO school, they might answer why osteopathic schools. And if you want to really get to the heart of that question, that's one where you need to have done some research and actually know about the school to which you're applying.
Yeah. And my one piece of advice, I'm glad no one else mentioned it, is treat the medical school interview like a coffee shop conversation. I hear from so many students day in and day out of like, that was a lot different than I expected it to be. We just kind of talked for 30 minutes and most of it was not about medicine. I'm like, yeah, that's the perfect interview. And not every, unfortunately, interview is like that. Some interviewers, some schools keep to scripts and keep to very specific questions. But ideally, best case scenario, if you allow it to happen and if it's okay with the school, the admissions committee, the specific interviewer, you'll have an amazing conversation about fly fishing if that's in your application. And that's your medical school interview. So there you go. Woo! Is front desk patient is front desk patient associate a good clinical position during a gap year? I want to describe, but they all require a year commitment, and I will hopefully be matriculating in med school in July. So I would love to speak to an employment attorney and ask how binding these commitments are. Like, yes, I will work for you for a year unless I get into med school, right? And then I'm leaving. Sorry. I would love to know what the ramifications are. Maybe Team Veronica can reach out to an employment attorney and see. And it may be a state-by-state thing. Anyway, front desk patient associate sounds a lot like you're a front desk person, aka administration, aka not clinical.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah, and we can't always tell from the title, but
right.
Doesn't sound clinical.
Right.
Yep. Anonymous Ant. I love that name. I love like I'm so childish. Like I would have loved like being Clark Kent and Peter Parker. Like I love alliteration just in general, and then Anonymous Ant just sounds like an amazing superhero. My question is in 2 comments because it is too long to fit into one. I would really appreciate all your perspective on this.
So it's really in 3.
Okay, so why did we put up the first one? Okay, great. 373 science GPA, 519 student athletes, currently in a medical science MS program, 100 plus clinical volunteer hours, 300 plus shadowing, 200 plus non-clinical community service, some leadership, 0 research hours. Applying to MD schools in 2023, from an admissions perspective, what is the best use of my time besides the MS? Shadowing a different specialty, scribe, medical assistant, research, or something else. Whatever you want.
Yep.
Whatever.
Sounds like you got all the bases. Well, I don't want to say you got all the bases covered, but you've done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
And so you could fit into anything, and really. So I would say, I agree with you, Ryan. I think that, do what you want to do. If you want to do research, do research. If you want to do, scribing, do scribing, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. That's funny.
Questions like this always make me nervous because like if you guys have ever watched Am I Ready, right? That's a 30 to 45 minute conversation where we pour over the MAP profile. Your hours don't really interest me that much. I'd like to know about recency. I'd like to know about consistency. I'd like to know how meaningful those experiences were. There's a reason that you can create a Mapped app profile for free and ask us to do a deep dive with you. You can sign up for a one-on-one session. I'm not trying to make this like we won't answer for free. It's fine for you to ask for free, but this should be a 30-minute conversation, and us just reading a quick laundry list from you is not really telling us the story.
But that unfortunately, that question and that mentality is the majority of pre-meds out there who think, I've checked all of these boxes. Am I missing any boxes? That is the question that was asked.
Yeah.
Right. And so not to throw shade at Anonymous Ant, that is the unfortunate mentality of most pre-meds out there. And we're here to tell you that's not the right mentality to have.
much more concerned about quality than quantity.
Yep.
Melissa, is it okay to ask questions back to interviewers? If so, what questions do you think are great? So typically there will be given some time for the interviewer to say, hey, do you have any questions for me? What I'd be interested to know, Scott, your philosophy here. When I'm doing mock interviews with students, like in Application Academy or something, I'll ask a random like ethical question, and then the student will go give their answer, and they go, "What are your thoughts?" And I'm like, "No, like this is not the time to ask." Then they'll go, "But you said it was a conversation." I'm like, "Come on, like no." So don't ask questions back in the middle of like, "Well, what are your thoughts on that?" or whatever. But if given the opportunity, the interviewer says, "Hey, do you have any questions for me?" Yes, be prepared for questions.
Yeah, and I think the best kinds of questions, because we often get students that will ask a question such as, about the curriculum or about the grading policy or, student life at the institution. Depending on who your interviewer is, they may not know any of that.
Yep.
So I think the best questions are specific to the individual. Doesn't mean you have to know ahead of time who that's going to be, but you ask them, what do you think is the best thing about this school? Why did you stay here? Why did you come here? Those kinds of personal questions, I think, are the best ones to ask.
Yeah. Agreed.
Do you know my favorite question? Scott, I don't know if you know my favorite question that I tell students to ask. What is your favorite thing about this school that not a lot of people know about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yep. I like that question a lot.
Sydney asks what to do if your GPA doesn't have an upward trend. Mine goes from 3.25 to 3.4 and plateaus. Oh noes, it plateaus. Rachel, what do you know?
Sounds to me like you're a little bit confused about what an upward trend is, Sydney, because the whole point is when we talk about upward trends, we're talking about students who maybe had a rough time earlier in their pre-med experience, or maybe even before they were pre-med. And the basic math is after you've got, 60, 70, 80, 90 credits, your cum just isn't going to move much. So you says mine goes from 3.25 to 3.4 and plateau. It sounds to me like you're talking about your cumulative GPA. What I would love to look at is what the green semester line looks like in your Mcat profile. Right? How many semesters in a row have you consecutively done much better than you used to do? How many credits were you taking those semesters? That's what I'm interested in. So, the cum is going to be limited by just the way math works. But what I want to know is, are you showing med students now that you can handle sustained academic rigor that maybe previously you couldn't handle, but you're showing them, here's the kind of student I am today.
Yegane. Yeah. I'm looking for clinical experience, but they need previous experience, which I don't have right now. What should I do? This is like the futile circle of like, I need experience to get experience, but I can't get experience because I don't have experience. How do I get experience? Yeah. Scott, what do you recommend students do in this situation?
Well, I think that you have to look at employment is a good example. If you apply, just finding clinical experience that is volunteer is fine, but you look at employment. Volunteer clinical experience you can find and broaden yourself to look at hospice, look at nursing homes, look at, don't just concentrate on a clinic or a hospital, broaden that notion of what clinical can be or is to include any kind of healthcare entity that takes care of patients.
Yeah. And then there's most of these pre-med jobs, number one, don't pay very well, which stinks. But number two, they understand that you don't have experience. So you may want to look at organizations like Scribe America or other organizations that are very popular amongst pre-meds to reach out to them because they know that you're not coming in with experience and they have training programs for you.
And depending on what state you're in, medical assistants, either can be trained on the job and don't need, experience because they'll train you. So check into your state and what the requirements are for your state in terms of an MA.
Yeah, definitely. Here in Colorado, no certification needed.
Yeah, in Texas as well. But I think in California, you do have to have certification. So
California, you need to have certification across the road.
yeah.
They don't like jaywalking there. All right. Marie, I got a quick question. If I was involved in a research and my lab published a paper, I was wondering where should I put the publication on my application? In the activities section.
Yep.
So the activities section, at least for AMCAS, has 18 categories. One of them is research. So it would go there.
Yep.
Rosemary asks, thoughts on combined MD, MBA, or DO MBA programs for students hoping to start a private practice down the line. Do you suggest pursuing the MBA or just taking a couple of business courses? Rachel, you got ideas there? We both operate a business. Do we have MBAs?
I do not.
Yeah.
Now, I did do a business minor in college for reasons that I will not get into today, but it was more about placating people in my life, shall we say? There's a lot of stuff that people learn in an MBA that I don't know. So I'm not trying to act like it's worthless. I'm just saying most MBAs are about specific kind of businesses and specific kinds of cultures that don't apply very much to a lot of small business stuff. And also these days, so much of the work that needs to happen in a private practice that's business specific can be outsourced, right? You're going to have a lawyer to help you with keeping your employees' stuff legal. You're going to have an accountant or a finance person. You're going to have an office manager. I personally don't think that you need to take business courses. Now, if it interests you, go for it. But I know a lot of people who are in business who don't have formal business backgrounds. I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
There are also in many areas of the country MBA programs that are designed specifically for practicing physicians.
Yeah.
So if you found later that you really needed, or you wanted because you wanted to go into hospital administration or whatever, you could always do something later that is focused in that particular area. So
definitely. Mac, thoughts on a letter of intent? If I decide to send one, would it be appropriate to send it post-interview after a few weeks or post-decision if needed? Well, hopefully you don't need it post-decision because you got a decision. But a letter of intent, for those who don't know, is basically a letter to the school saying, hey, school, if you accept me, I will come. Please, please, please accept me. And they potentially have some use depending on the school. Most definitely post-interview, right, Scott? Yeah, I wouldn't send a letter of intent pre-interview going, hey, if you accept me, I'll come. The school's like, I haven't even invited you for an interview yet. That's like reaching out to your friends, like, hey, if you're having a dinner party Friday, I'll be there. Like, no, you're not invited. So yeah, don't do that. It may help, it may not. Definitely post-interview.
Yeah, agreed.
And please don't game the system and send everyone a letter of intent. Like, then you're just ruining the game for everyone else.
Yeah.
Then schools won't believe them.
Yeah.
Jesus, would anyone be able to speak to starting a family during medical school? The birds and the bees talk. Rachel, let's go.
I'm not going to do birds and bees. Yeah, Jesus, there are a lot of people who do this.
Yep.
And I would say rather than us trying to get into it now, I mean, Ryan, I know you actually spent some of your early medical school residency years married, but in separate cities, because that's the way you two pursued your careers. So sometimes the solution is we do part of life and put part of life on hold. And sometimes the solution is just keep on trucking with whatever you're going to do anyway. Yeah. What I would recommend you do is go on Instagram and follow some of our favorite parents who are pre-meds and med students. One in particular that's great is Adrian, who's staff sergeant to MD PhD. And then also, if you join our pre-med hangout, there are a lot of parents in there. So that's just it's our private but large pre-med Facebook group. So if you go to premedhangout.com, and there are a ton of people who are parents and pre-med, or people who are in med school and parents there. So you can collaborate with them and hear their experiences.
There are even single parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the answer is there's no right answer.
Right.
You can start a family before med school. You can start a family during medical school. You can start a family during residency. Everyone has done it. I've seen it happen. There's no right time to start a family.
Yep.
Starting a family, regardless of your medical school aspirations, physician aspirations, is hard, and it just adds a layer of complication. And you need some support through the journey. And so depending on your spousal situation or support situation, there just needs to be a lot of communication and adjustment of life and expectation management. And maybe you go from wanting to be the top 1% in your medical school class to know that maybe you're not going to be top 1% because you have other responsibilities outside of school, and that's okay.
Yep.
Melissa asks, is phlebotomy great for clinical experience? Yes.
Sure.
Just don't miss.
Just be good at it, please.
I got mad at a phlebotomist once. I have like the biggest anti-cube veins and used to donate blood all the time on campus. And one time they missed. And I'm like, how do you miss that honker of a vein? Anyway.
What was the adjective you used to describe your vein?
Honker.
What? My honker.
No, anticube.
My anticube. The anticubital fossa. That's
Okay.
Short is anticube.
Mufasa?
Or as my daughter called it, your elbow pit. Because if that's your armpit, that's your elbow pit.
Honestly, if you had said elbow pit, I would have been with you. And because you said anticube, I was like, gotta Google that or ask Ryan. Yeah. So I'm all with your daughter.
So what was it again? Mufasa?
What? The anticubital fossa.
Fossa, not Mufasa. Okay.
No, fossa.
Careful.
Yeah. Dina asks, are research hours necessary for DO schools? Guess what? They're not necessary for MD schools. I have lots of clinical and volunteer experience, but I've had a difficult time finding research. Research is not required, period.
Nope.
No matter what school.
Nope.
Unless the school requires research, which very few do.
Yeah.
MD or DO.
Yep.
Jawad is back. I became an Eagle Scout through a religious organization. I still volunteer at that organization. Can I combine my time at Scouts to present day?
Sure.
Why not?
Yeah, this is such a common question. Mm-hmm. People are always looking for a way to sneak in the fact that they were an Eagle Scout.
Yep.
And typically what I say is it's probably not going to be in your primary and should be instead in your secondary. But yeah, if you want to kind of skate on the technicality of I'm still in that group, so therefore I started in high school but kept going, I think that's fine.
Yep.
'23 NVSC. Recently applied in the 2021 cycle, planning on reapplying in 2024 after I finish a master's program. I have great activities and experience, but I'm afraid they won't count when I reapply.
Pourquoi?
¿Por qué no? Yeah. Yeah. They count. Activities don't expire. Anything post high school is good. Yeah. My question, and I hope you've thought that out, is you're doing the master's because it's your GPA that needs repair, and you're doing a science-based master's to show that academic ability.
Mm-hmm. And so actually, they added that their weakest is their MCAT.
No,
so
I was going to go there.
Why are you taking a master's if your
there.
weakest is your MCAT?
No, don't spend $50,000 on a master. Spend $5,000 on a tutor, on an MCAT tutor.
That's yeah.
Yeah, it's such a common and I blame the academic institutions. I
Yep.
blame the medical schools because they're like, hey, you're rejected. Have you thought about our master's program? Like, no, like, and it's our job here. So, Scott, a student doesn't do well, doesn't get into medical school. They have a 3.9 GPA. They have a 499 MCAT score. Should they do a master's program?
No.
Why not?
That's not the issue.
Right? Academic ability has already been proven.
Correct.
Right. But
That's exactly
MCAT
right.
score, which has some loose correlation supposedly to board performance, hasn't been proven yet.
Correct.
Yeah. So you need a better MCAT score. You don't need a master's. So please, Lord, I hope you haven't started your master's yet. If you have just started, see if you can get out quickly.
Yeah.
All right. That's our job here. Saving lives through reduced student tuition burden.
Yeah, right.
Debt burden. Kevin asks, I'm currently working as a community health worker and shadowing. How many hours would be recommended for shadowing, or can I combine my employment as a CHW with shadowing? Rachel.
Yeah, it's a good question, Kevin. I see shadowing as something different than clinical work, because if you're doing work alongside physicians, then maybe you're seeing some of the work they do, but you're seeing the parts that you collaborate on and probably maybe a lot of the stuff that's specific to the clinic. But to me, the whole point of shadowing is not just to observe the doctor with patients, but also to observe the entire doctor's day. So, hours on the phone with insurance, logging notes if they don't have a scribe, just kind of the whole experience. So if you've been working in clinical a lot, like if you have a lot of experience, you may not need a ton of shadowing. But what I would recommend is find a physician you like at work and ask them, hey, sometime when I'm not on shift, can I follow you around for a day, so that you can at least get a little bit of official shadowing.
Yep.
Got another one? There we go.
Tiffany, is yield protection real, and how should I consider it when building a school list? I love the yield protection question. Scott, yes or no, is yield protection real?
Well, I'm a little foggy on what yield protection actually is.
Okay.
I'm guessing that it's the medical schools are trying to make sure that the people that they make offers to are going to actually enroll. And so what that does is that increases their competitiveness for like these rankings and stuff like that. So the answer to the question is yes, it is real. I think that medical schools do that, some more than others. But I don't think that, number one, I don't know how you would know if a school does that or to what extent they do it.
Yep.
So I don't think it's a factor that you really should even think about in terms of building a school list.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that I like to think about yield protection, right, as you mentioned, it's definitely a thing, and it's going to depend on the school. Outside of if they're playing games for U.S. News and World Reports, is there a specific mission that the school has, or a location where the school is, where they know historically students not from that location or students who don't have activities that match that mission aren't going to come there? And the biggest one I always think about, our good friend, Dr. Sunny Nakai, who used to be she's not at UC Riverside anymore. She used to be at UC Riverside, which is a UC school in Southern California that specifically has a mission to serve the Inland Empire. And if you go and look at their stats on the MSAR, the medical school admissions requirements tool that the AAMC puts out, their stats are much lower than most other schools because they are serving a very specific population. They are accepting students typically from that same population, and that area historically is underserved, more disadvantaged, and their stats reflect that. And so from Dr. Sunny Nakai, they knew that if they had someone from Manhattan, New York City, right, who had a 520 MCAT score and a 3.9 GPA, which are fantastic stats, applying to UC Riverside as a quote unquote safety school, UC Riverside wouldn't give them the time of the day because they knew that student just wasn't going to be a good fit at that school. And so that also would be considered yield protection. They're protecting the kind of golden tickets, this limited resource that they have in terms of interview spots, and only giving interview spots to people who theoretically fit their mission, who they know will want to come to their school. So that is also yield protection outside of playing games for the rankings and stuff. And you don't know. You don't know what schools are doing. You don't know how they're thinking about things. And so it should not be considered.
Agreed.
RM. It's just missing that E. We'd have a good band. Hi, all. My favorite, Dr. Ryan Gray. Oh, I'm someone's favorite.
Thanks so much. The rest of us just don't matter.
Yeah, just put me on solo. We don't need those other people on the screen.
Thanks, RM.
I am interested in pediatrics and planning on substituting within the clinic in schools. I would be taking temperatures, giving Band-Aids, and ice. Is this clinical? Okay, sure. All right, you're basically acting as a nurse assistant in the nurse's office at a school. Sure. It's a good different one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, welcome back to the stage, all of the non-favorites. Sonara. My GPA flunked in the winter from a C I received in OChem 1. It is now sitting at 3.54, which is still good. And I have until 2024 to graduate. Science GPA is not the best, around a 3.4. Can I still get accepted? All at the same time. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
You got lots of time.
I just want to, I mean, obviously consensually, but Sonara, I just want to give you a hug that you used the word flunked and then talked about assy and then talked about a GPA that's still north of 3.5. The mythos and just frankly BS around GPA is crazy to me. Yes, you need good stats to get into med school, largely because you're proving to med schools that you can handle the rigor of the courses. But 1C and one course is just step back, reflect, figure out why it happened, change your behavior, move on. It's going to be okay.
And the fact that she's probably a sophomore, that C hits a little bit harder because the denominator isn't that big yet because she doesn't have a lot of credits under her belt. And as she takes more classes, she'll be fine.
Yep. Keep on trucking.
Ramja, are medical schools preparing for the possible repeal of affirmative action? If overturned, should I be concerned about not getting into medical school as a non-traditional minority student? So a little background information for those who don't know, the Supreme Court is taking up or is in the process of ruling on, I think it was Harvard. Some students brought a case against Harvard, basically saying, hey, we're being discriminated because we're a majority, not a minority, and they're not letting us into school even though we have good grades and good stats, and so we're being discriminated against, and they're blaming affirmative action. The case has been taken up by the Supreme Court, and my assumption is that the Supreme Court's going to say that affirmative action is unconstitutional. And so, yeah, I'm betting med schools are preparing for what to do if they are using race-based decisions in their admissions processes. They're preparing. Now, something that maybe not a lot of students know is California already removed affirmative action. So race-based decisions in California have already happened. Now, Scott, as a former director of admissions and retired executive director of TMD SAS, what sort of rumblings from medical schools, I mean, without giving specifics, what do you think is happening at medical schools, specifically for schools that are still using race-based decisions in their admissions process?
Yeah, they're trying to figure out what they want diverse classes for a variety of reasons, and so they will try to figure out what can we do to attract and to not only to attract applicants that represent a diversity of backgrounds, et cetera, but they also are trying to figure out in terms of their process how can they do that in a way that's going to be inclusive and in terms of looking at applicants. So it's complicated. It is frustrating for many admissions officers who want diverse classes for the educational benefit, but also because they want to produce physicians that look like the entirety of the nation and will serve the population of the nation in the varieties of it of what that looks like. So it's frustrating for admissions officers as well, but they are preparing for it, and they're looking at what can we do in terms of particularly noting what it means to be qualified. What does that actually mean? And that will dictate in some regards what they're, because I think a lot of the people that are opposed to affirmative action make assumptions about what qualification is, and they concentrate on qualification being the numbers.
Yes.
But qualification is a bigger issue than that.
Yes.
And it really involves a much bigger picture of what it means to be qualified to be in medicine, et cetera. And so they're looking at that entirety of that to see how can we list out the things that we look at to consider an applicant that's going to be inclusive of the entirety of what qualification really means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I know it's not out yet, but in the next few months, you guys will see that Dr. Wright is making a podcast about core competencies. And I think that gets at some of this. It's about the attributes you bring as a rounded, mature adult. And in my limited and personal experience, the people who have complained to me about affirmative action are often people who assume that the space is theirs to lose. So, I mean, like the term white supremacy rankles a lot of people, but if your default assumption is that all of the spaces belong to white people and someone else is taking them from you as a white person, then there's already something wrong with your attitude that makes me worry about your ability to be a team player. So I would just say proceed with a whole lot of caution here, because I don't know how many times we've said, regardless of affirmative action, your stats are not your story.
Right.
So things may change, and yet also there's still going to be a holistic review. They're still looking for proof that you actually care about people and aren't doing this because mom and dad told you had to.
Yep. 'Tis true.
Yep. Ahmad, is it recommended that I start self-studying for the Mcat Prereqs so that I can do the Mcat ASAP, or should I just wait until I do the courses at school? Rachel Grubbs, Mcat expert.
Personally, I say do the courses first, because Mcat is content review, but it's also a whole lot of critical thinking and learning how to answer the questions. And if you're trying to get ahead on Mcat prep, and again, I'm generally speaking, this may or may not apply to you, Ahmad, the thing that most people are lacking when they come to Mcat prep is reading skills, because it is a critical thinking, critical analysis, problem solving exam. So I would say, unless you are already looking ahead and going, oh, I'm not going to have time to take X or Y course before I need to take the MCAT, so I need to get ahead on that particular content, let your professors and TAs teach it to you the first time, and then just keep in mind you're going to need it again. You need to not learn it to get the A in the course, but learn it to remember it for the MCAT. But if you're really trying to get a jump on MCAT prep, what most people come woefully unprepared for is how much reading and thinking and problem solving matters. So if you're not doing non-science reading at least a couple times a week, then that's the thing I would tell you to get a jump on now instead of trying to pre-study sciences.
Definitely. Maya asks, when you talk about having an upward trend in GPA, are you referring to the semester GPA or the science GPA? Yes.
Yes.
All of it.
Yes, all of it. Yeah, it's kind of hard to have a science GPA trend without the semester trend. So they kind of go hand in hand. Mammy, hello. I was a public health major in undergrad. I took HISC, human biochemistry, instead of biochemistry. Should I retake biochemistry? No idea. Yeah, without knowing specifically what that biochemistry is and what the syllabus says and everything that you covered. Now, Scott, one thing I love about TMDSAS is that they do a really good job of being public about what counts as a biochemistry course and what doesn't. So, Mammy, what I would potentially recommend is just do a quick Google search, and I'll Google it here. If you just do TMDSAS course classification, and the first thing that pops up, at least for me, is course listings. Find your university in that list, and then go look at what counts as biochemistry based on TMDSAS. And that's probably a good reflection of if it's going to count.
And I can tell you that there are specific subject matter categories that they're looking for in biochemistry that the medical schools have identified that's what they're looking for. And you can find that on the TMDSAS website what for biochemistry. And the other one that is very common to look at is statistics. There are certain particular things they're looking for in a stat class for it to count.
There you go. Now, while my combined GPA is roughly 3.04, and I've essentially have 3 GPAs, 1.8, 4.0, 3.66, it took me 9 years to finish undergrad, but I do have an upward trend. Can I apply to med school without a post-bac? So, Noel, what I would recommend is go over to mappd.com, mappd.com, plug in all of those courses. And if you haven't created an account yet, you can use the promo code 30 days free, and you will be able to have access to Mapped App Pro, which is basically Mapped plus being able to chat with our advisors. And then once all of your grades are put in, you can then ask for that advisor to go take a look at your GPA, and they'll be able to give you a more specific answer based on your situation. Yeah. But in general, a post-bac is to show academic capability. You may have already done that with your 4.0 and 3.66. It's just hard to know without looking.
Yeah, but what we want is this level of detail. So we want to be able to look at these charts. We want to be able to go into more detail and look at your trend by year. We want to look at courses you've taken. So it's definitely worth the time to enter all this so that and then one of the advisors can give you some feedback.
Mapped App Pro is only $90 for the year, $7.50 a month to be able to have access to world-class advisors here on the MSHQ and Mapped team. So well worth it. And even more fun stuff coming to Mapped App Pro. Hint, hint, hint. Vladimir asks, is it...
Oh, sorry. That's me clicking on a banner. Bring it back.
Advised to talk about one's children during the application process or interviews? Is it advised to talk about the little ones? Scott, what do you think? Is that an automatic red flag? Like,
no,
this one has kids. They're not going to be focused.
No, I think it depends on why you're talking about them, particularly in the application itself. You just don't want to just kind of fling it out there like, by the way, I have 3 kids, and and it just not be relevant. So a good example would be maybe the reason you got interested in medicine was your wife was pregnant and went through a difficult pregnancy, and you visited the doctor with her a lot, and and that whole process of doing that is what was the seed for your interest in medicine. In that regard, yeah, it's obviously perfectly appropriate. So I would say it depends on kind of why you're mentioning it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very common statement that I'll make talking to students in Application Academy, which, by the way, is open for 2023. At least registrations are open at applicationacademy.com. Very common statement is, don't bring your agenda to where it's not needed. Right? Don't just cram stuff in.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not saying that, Vladimir, that you had this, but one of the most common questions we get is, I didn't do XYZ because I'm a parent. Is that okay? And no, right? Whether you're an athlete or a parent or you have a learning difference, the requirements are the requirements. So it might be harder or take you longer, and it might speak to your maturity and persistence that, hey, I took all these prereqs and I got all these great grades, and I was a parent in the bargain, right? Like, that can make you seem really impressive, but it's never an excuse. It's just one more factor in your life.
Yep. Sonara, Rachel, you are now my favorite.
Well,
okay, someone take pity on Scott.
Thanks so much.
Well, what about
RM,
me?
now
I got
Sonara.
removed from the favorites. Not I look at those words; they're chosen carefully. You're now my favorite. Not you're now one of my favorites. That means I am no longer a favorite. So, Rachel, you take over.
Okay, it was RM who said you were your favorite, and the whole reason.
Okay, all right, that's true. All right,
and the whole reason that there were many reasons, but one of the reasons that, Ryan, that you decided to join up with other advisors is because different students respond to different personalities. So
everyone loves me.
Obviously, no one likes my personality.
People do really love Ryan. It's true.
Oh, all right. Sonara, I had another question. Is it okay to take a year off after graduation to focus on studying for the Mcat and strengthen my application? I'll be a 27-year-old non-trad. Yes, very common.
Yeah, never too late. We've got people applying this year who are in their 50s.
Yep. Absolutely.
Kevin, he's a fun guy. I applied this cycle and haven't received any interviews yet. When should I start freaking out or planning to reapply? Rachel?
Hopefully you never freak out, although I definitely understand the temptation. Our rough rule of thumb is if you don't have an interview invite by Thanksgiving, so by the end of November, American Thanksgiving, not the one in Canada that's happening like now, that's when you should start to make a reapplication plan. The thought there isn't that you give up hope. It's that whole, like, prepare for the worst, hope for the best, right? So you're just starting to think about, if I have weaknesses, you don't want to wait until April and then go, what do I do to improve my application, right? You can spend the next 6 months doing things that might improve your application in case you need to apply again in May or June. But yeah, I hopefully you can avoid freaking out. Take up running, take up knitting, take up yoga. Try to put that anxious energy somewhere. And if you're still feeling anxious, go back to what can you do to strengthen your application, because that might actually make you feel better just to know you're taking steps.
Yep. Head-on curls. Will a solid upward trend of 2 years, but then getting a C in Gen Chem 2 and a D in Orgo 1 cause for concern? I did retake Orgo and got a B+, followed by an upward trend once again of 35 credits. Dr. Scott Wright, normally 1 class, 2 class doesn't make or break an application. Getting some poor grades while trying to do an upward trend is hard because it kind of breaks the upward trend. But this student is saying, hey, I still got another upward trend of 35 credits. So what do you think?
Well, as with all these things, it's a little bit difficult to judge it based on just the bare minimum of information that we get here. My concern. So you said I did retake Orgo and got a B+, so that's good. Followed by opportunity again of 35 credits. So is it a cause for concern? Yeah, I mean, you may want to have concern about it. Is a cause not to apply? No. I think, you, particularly with the Orgo, you did, you improved quite notably. And, your MCAT score on the relevant section is going to be kind of important in terms of what the medical schools are going to look at. So I would say maybe a small bit of concern, but I don't know that really should dictate anything for you in terms of not applying or whatever like that. So, yeah, so that's all I have to say about that.
From Forrest Gump. I think.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. Anyway, Melissa, what are your thoughts on the types of gap year opportunities that are best to strengthen the application? The question is, Melissa, what does your specific application need strengthening? What in your application needs strengthening? That is the best gap year opportunity.
Yep.
Right. There's not a one solution fits all. Some students need to focus on MCAT because they haven't taken the MCAT. Some students need to do a post-bac because they struggled. Some students need clinical experience because they were focused on their classes that they didn't get any clinical experience. Some students need shadowing, whatever, right? It just depends on your specific application. And if you need help figuring that out, that is a good use of Mapped App Pro. Put in all of your activities, put in your grades, and reach out to our advisors through Mapped to ask what you should focus on potentially. Marcella, I am applying this cycle and received just one interview invite in August and silence since. I have a 3.6 GPA, 3.45 science GPA with upward trends, 5.16 MCAT, also a URM. Should I be worried at this point? Nope. Patience is a virtue in this game. Yep. I'm splitting an experience into two to separate hours into clinical and not clinical. Is it awkward to make them both most meaningful? One on patience and the other on the business side.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. I
don't think it'd be awkward.
Yeah. I mean, don't copy and paste the same most meaningful essay. That would be awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you have two very different experiences or two different kind of roles in one experience, and they're both meaningful to you, that's my favorite answer to give for the activity section, which is frustrating for students. Is there's no right or wrong typically for that.
That's right.
All right. I think we got time for one more.
Uno más
pregunta. Ahora, por favor. Sophia, hello, Dr. Gray, with an A, please, next time. Is doing research looked down on? I did a semester. Wait, is not doing research. I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't sound
right.
I did a semester of research through a class, but I didn't enjoy it. For that reason, I put more time into teaching, volunteering, etc., because I love it. That is the perfect answer.
Right.
That's the best reason to not do research.
Yep.
So yeah, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good job. And with that, a final reminder: Mapped App Pro is only $90 for the year. For the year, $7.50 for the month, where you can ask us, the Mapped App, their Mapped advising team, the MSHQ advising team, the whatever we want to call ourselves today team. You can ask us super specific questions, enter all of your grades, enter all of your courses. If you want to just check it out, Mapped is free. Enter your courses, enter your MCAT, enter your activities, start working on your applications, start building your school list, track your applications to medical school. That will always be free. What you pay for Mapped App Pro is the advising and more fun stuff to come. So go to mapped.com, check that out. Dr. Scott Wright, Rachel Grubbs, thank you so much for being two of the three amigos in this crew. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern here on Ask Mapped.
Yeah, it was
Any
super
parting
fun.
words?
Yeah, we had so many questions today that were, here's my story, will you give me feedback? And Ryan said it, we just put a banner at the bottom of the screen. If you want to get into that level of detail with us, you're going to be better off going to Mapped and asking us there through the chat advising, so that we can see everything. And it's not that we're not thinking you're leaving things out. It's that you may not know what's important. So if we see all your data, then we can give you a proper assessment. So.
Yes, es verdad. All righty. And with that, Ask Mapped is now over.